Finding a photographer who's willing to go the extra mile, to change their perspective a tad, to tell your story and make you the focus.
Hi, I'm John from PGP Wedding Films, and welcome to Say Yes to the Best, where we talk to the best wedding pros to give you wedding planning tips. Today I'm with Lydia from Lydia Joy Photography. Hi, Lydia. How are you doing?
Good.
Thank you for being here.
No problem.
How did you get started as a wedding photographer?
I actually took a film class in high school, and it really made me fall in love with the art of photography and the highlights and the shadows. And so then I started photographing families, and I kind of started to fall in love with the different moments and emotions that you see in that. And then I was lucky enough to be handed my first wedding. And so I second shot a lot of weddings to kind of get the ins and outs of what it's like to be in a wedding day. And then I shot my first wedding and I was hooked. And so I really just love photographing all of that. And so that's kind of where it started. In the first year, had about 3, and then it just took off from there.
So how long have you been in business?
This will be my 5th year in business.
Well, one of the reasons, Lydia, I wanted to have you on here is whenever couples come to me and ask for a recommendation for a photographer, I always say if I was getting married today, I would have you do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I put my money where my mouth is because you had a branding promotion, and I had you take some photos of me when I was on a wedding, and pretty sure I was wearing this same shirt.
It's okay.
Which is, it's a good shirt.
Yeah.
And they turned out great. I mean, that's definitely a hard job making me look good. So, that should say everything about Lydia.
Well, thank you.
So one of the things that I've always admired working with you is how you're able to get such beautiful shots, but you're not the type of photographer who takes a lot of time to get them. So I know you wanted to talk to our audience about things they can look for that can kind of indicate whether the photographers they're choosing between, having that thought process to make sure that they're going to get a beautiful wedding photo regardless of where or when or whatever is going on at their wedding.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. I think it's important to find a photographer that's really willing to go the extra mile to be creative and push themselves in whatever space you're getting ready in, whatever space you're getting married in, as far as your portraits, and even for your reception. I think it's important. My goal is to always tell your story. And so your story is wherever it happened. And so to me, the space isn't as important as what's going on in the story that's taking place. So finding a photographer who's being creative in that space, looking for light in that space, using the surroundings in the room to tell your story opposed to just standing there. I guess sometimes a space to a non-photographer might not look as appealing, but we come in and be super excited to use all the different elements of that room to further tell your story.
As someone who works with photographers all the time, one of the reasons why I would never want to be a photographer is, especially with portraits, I could never deal with the logistics of that and then make them look anything other than you handed your uncle the camera and they clicked it and whatever. I see stuff you shot, other great photographers who get those portraits and they just look breathtaking, and it's that's so beyond me. So yeah.
You're walking into their mom's house, right? And they see the space that's filled with photos and mirrors and plants, and they are like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? And for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, what can I do with this? I want to, you're using, it's their childhood home. You use that to tell their story. So I know that you had mentioned that I'm able to get great photos relatively quickly. And I think that that's really important because I want couples to be able to still enjoy their cocktail hour, still enjoy their reception. And so one of the things that I push myself to do is it's making the most of the 15 to 20 minutes that I have with that client when we're doing their portraits. Or so some of the things that I push myself to do is to make the photos and that little amount of time I have as visually appealing as possible. So something that I really strive to do is I don't like things in the background, cars in the background, items coming out of couples' heads, such as trees or poles.
We tried really hard to make sure that no poles were going out of our heads.
Yeah, see, that's important to me. The framing is good. Framing people is super important. And so it's finding a photographer who's willing to go the extra mile to change their perspective a tad, to tell your story and make you the focus instead of having clutter in the background that's distracting. It's horizon lines going through people's heads. Just that little change in perspective makes the photo so much more appealing, whether you realize it or not. Although I guarantee now that I said it, you're going to look for it. But it's just looking for a photographer who's just willing to really push themselves.
One of the things that I do outside of weddings is I teach a television production class at Rowan University in New Jersey. And one of the things we always talk about, we go through a lesson on composition, and a lot of the things you talked about with horizon lines, things popping out of people's heads. Like we talk about that, and some of the students, kind of roll their eyes and they think they know these things. And then when I send them out on a project, and what do I see? All of those things. So I totally agree that yes, you can look for these things, but that's why you hire a professional, because they are supposed to be constantly thinking of these things. So in the film world, like audio is a big thing. You don't think about audio, but if it's bad,
then you notice.
So.
And I think that's the scariest part too, is when you're hiring someone, like everything can be good, but when it's bad, that's when you notice, and you don't want to end up in a situation where things are bad, especially when it's your wedding photos.
So what makes the biggest difference for you on a wedding day? Like what can couples do that would help you as a photographer like get the best possible work?
For me, the biggest thing is trust. When you hire vendors you can trust, it's amazing how much less stressful your day is. For me, like I'm willing to have one, but I don't need a shot list, because your story tells itself that day. So when you trust me to do my job, and you trust me to tell your story and photograph your moments, and it makes my job so much easier, honestly. And I feel like the day flows easier for couples, and that would be my biggest thing. That's what makes the biggest difference. When I have a client who feels like they have to help me do my job, I feel like they're being stressed. Whereas if they can just sit back and relax and trust me, that's what makes the biggest difference on the wedding day. And your photos turn out better because I'm in my element. I'm doing my thing and delivering exactly what you hired me for. All the things that clients fall in love with when they email me and they're like, I love that you capture candid moments. I love that you're capturing personalities. People will look at photos sometimes and be like, I feel what they're feeling in that moment. And that happened by letting me do my job, letting me be in your space, letting me be part of the intimate moments, and then portraying it the best as possible.
What's your favorite part of the wedding day to shoot?
That's tough. Honestly, at this point, it's a really close tie between portraits and the reception. I love the reception, which is funny because if you had asked me 2 years ago, it was not my thing, but it's because I was doing it wrong. I wasn't enjoying it. I was lighting it differently. I don't know. But now, for me, the party is where personalities come out. The party is when people start dancing and you really start to see the guests that are important to them. And you start to see, I love the personalities that come out. I love when people start hugging and people start laughing. And I love speeches at the receptions because I love the emotion in that. So for me, that's used to be one of the scariest parts to photograph. But now for me, it's one of my favorites. I love seeing them interact with all their guests. So,
what would you say at this point is the most difficult part of the day for you?
I feel like sometimes the ceremony is the most difficult because it happens so quickly. There's so much I want to do. And sometimes it's only 10
And you can't really be like, hey, could you do that again?
Yeah, no. And see, that's something I don't do. I'm never going to tell a client to do things twice.
Great, thanks, Lydia. I have 10 questions so that our audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Oh, fun. Okay.
What was your first wedding shoot like?
My first wedding shoot, oh my gosh. Rushed, and I felt frazzled, but it was also awesome. It was a huge rush. It was like, it answered my question of what do you want to do for the rest of your life? So it was fun.
What is the craziest photo you've ever taken at a wedding?
At a wedding, they had a hawk be the ring bearer. So the hawk flew down the aisle to deliver the ring. That was pretty crazy.
I've done that once, and they tell you, like, don't move.
Yeah, they're like, don't move. It can land on you. They'll think your lens is... And I'm like, oh my gosh. I didn't find out till like 5 seconds before. So I was like, okay, cool. That was probably one of the like craziest, stressful, most exciting things that happened at a wedding.
What is your least favorite wedding tradition?
The dollar dance. I have to be honest.
That's a good one.
Oh,
I hate that.
It takes up so much time, and it's just awkward photos of people dancing with people. But they get honeymoon money, so I mean,
Yeah.
is it worth it? Photo-wise, not my favorite.
How often have you seen that? I've only done a handful of weddings where they do that.
Probably about 5 or 6, and I've shot like 70, so not that much. Or receiving lines.
Yeah.
Receiving lines is up there for me. That's a big time waste.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I understand it because then it's like, all right, everyone's walking out, you get to talk to them, you don't have to worry about it, but it's like.
I saw once at a wedding, though, they actually greeted everybody in line while they were getting in line for their food.
Ooh, that's a good.
There
you go. Do it that way.
It was a great idea. I was like, genius. Just like eat your tacos while everyone else is good to go.
What is your favorite TV show?
Oh, probably Game of Thrones. Guilty. Okay.
The North remembers.
Okay, good.
Favorite book?
The Notebook. The Notebook is my favorite book, for sure.
Favorite movie? Is it also The Notebook?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite photographer?
It would have to be a combination between Two Man Studios and the Hearns.
What is something that people do not know about you?
I'm a big collector of cowgirl boots. I've got like 13 pair. Wow. And I live in Delaware, so it's kind of odd up here. That and turquoise jewelry. It's kind of my thing.
What is your dream place to shoot a wedding?
Round Top, Texas, Junk Gypsy headquarters. They just built the Wonder Inn. I want to shoot a wedding there so bad. Round Top, Texas is like this tiny little town in Texas, and Junk Gypsy is like my favorite thing ever. So that's my dream.
Okay. Yeah. And what is the best reaction you have ever gotten from a couple about your work?
I mean, for me, it's just, I love it when they say, oh my gosh, you got this moment that I didn't even know was happening. For me, it's that, or when they're like, I'm reliving my day all over again. That's the goal for me.
Well, Lydia, thank you so much. Lydia Joy Photography, all of her information will be below. You can follow her everywhere online. You should. Her work is awesome. Thank you again, and thank you for watching Say Yes to the Best. Happy planning.